like?
Well, no,
No.
Barton.
I don't want to do it by myself here. We're a team.
I try to be.
You guys are bound for glory. I hope you're ready for the big push.
Well, I don't
Harold, we're
necessarily wanna
facing
be.
prison. Yeah. And my show can be pulled like that. That's what they said.
They didn't. It was pushed one day.
No.
Okay, don't
it
go.
It could be a week.
Go.
Could be a month.
Okay.
It could be that's it.
Well, that's what. Go ahead. Are you on? Yes. Okay, welcome. Welcome very, very much to Conversation. A pleasure to welcome to the program two public access producers that are really on the cutting edge of challenging in a fundamental way and in a living and very concerned way the human condition and the use of mediation and distribution of communication about the human condition within the public access realm, and that's seen within the larger context of social organization of the planet. And they are married. They're a wonderful couple. They're an inspirational couple. And on my far left is Joe Barton. And Joe Barton is now a public access host. He's just recently become that, and he's got a program called Pot Talk, and he's a cannabis activist. And Joe, welcome so much. It's so good to have you on the set. Anxious to get some reports from Woodstock and beyond and so forth. Immediately left his lovely wife. What a wonderful team they are. That's Paula, Gloria. She's been on for a very long time with her program Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. She's a dear friend from decades and so forth, and a great friend of the universe. Welcome both very, very much.
Thank you, Harold.
I've just so you people are maybe, I'm not sure who can best, maybe Paula can kick it off and then we can go back and forth. But I would presume you might want to talk about the situation currently that you're involved with, and some of the background to it, up in Woodstock or up in Hurley and so forth. But maybe, Paula, you could kick it off. Talk about what you two are trying to do, what the situation is.
The only thing I want to say to kick it off is I am so grateful to you, Harold, because I know you have believed in public access for decades before I even knew it existed.
No.
And I didn't understand until I came to New York. Alan Steinfeld introduced it to me.
Alan's a great guy.
For New Realities at that time. And then I had a show called The Whole Two.
I remember.
Then I went to India for 4 years, and I came back, and I had a lot of videos done with people on what the bleep do we know. And that looked to be so fashionable then, and I thought I could slipstream off their publicity because we had interviews that went into the topics more deeply. And so I called my show Farther Down the Rabbit Hole because the footage we had shot, Alan and I, wouldn't have been for the mass consumption that what the bleep do we know was trying to target a wider audience. Alan and I specifically shot at the spiritual school where that was done. So it was for that reason that I called my show Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. It actually, I had wanted to do New Realities Global Public Access, but Alan felt that my vision was a little bit too outrageous. And
really?
he pulled away from that, and there I was, high and dry with no name. And I just, because I definitely wanted to go daily. And Joe Friendly helped me a lot at that time.
Guy,
And then I think a lady named Melissa, who was in programming, one of her last moves here was to give me the daily show. And then I came on with Webster Tarpley on the 9/11 truth.
I remember all those things down at Union Square with his book and everything. Yeah,
right.
It's wonderful.
Right.
Yeah, you've been doing that.
Well, it's been a learning curve for me. I realized I went through a lot of misinformation too.
Yeah.
I meant well, and I always tell people, check out everything that I say because this is just where I'm at this moment.
Right.
I believe in transparent television.
Good.
But one thing's for sure, and I want Joe to speak most of the time now because the way he understands law is superb, but if you understand law really well, but nobody understands that you understand in the community, and public servants are manipulating things hoping you don't understand, then that means your only breath of success is if the wider people, the populace, understands. And that's why we have Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and looks like we're getting a certain following up in Woodstock, on Woodstock Public Access. And we, like here, we try to help the other producers too. It's not about our message, but it's about a community working together together to put out a message,
And if I may,
or whatever the message is.
Yeah, right. Well, the
Is that-
message is very pointed, becoming so. And Joe's been working 40 years in understanding the law for his own perspective.
Right.
We're going to get to him in a second. But you two come on as a team that is inspirational to a lot of people because you help each other. You're working together as a team. There's a synergistic more than the sum of the two
Yeah.
of you. And I think you're both marked for great, a great number of people being aware of what it is you're collectively trying to convey in terms of the operation of Spaceship Earth. I
think-
really do. I think you're marked for that.
You know,
Well,
And what did we say, Paula, when did you two meet? And then pass it over to Joe, maybe.
I met when
I was
Abigail-
walking down the street, and all of a sudden Paula was grabbing my butt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You?
Yeah.
Honestly. That's all out of character. I don't believe you, young man. That's not in character. Yeah, yeah.
No, go ahead, tell him.
No, just, I mean, we met when Abigail Storm had a rally up at Albany.
No, I was having the rally.
And you were having the rally, but Abigail Storm is who I met first.
Abigail's with the
I
hat.
put my camera
Yeah.
on
The
her.
hat lady, yeah.
There's a lot of people I met on camera. I met
Yeah.
Jane Goldberg on
Yeah,
camera.
right.
It's actually, those moments are documented. And Abigail gave such a lot of information. She was like a machine gun.
Yes.
And I was keeping up with it because I had just done a documentary on low-level radioactive stones.
I remember, what's his name, that fellow?
Jay
Rock-
Gutierrez,
No, is it-
radiation hormesis.
No, that, and then there's also
Ted
another guy.
Rockwell was one of the
yeah.
scientists.
Yeah, right. I remember.
Yeah, he
you-
worked on the Manhattan Project.
You've gone
yeah.
down so many rabbit holes in depth.
So then people told me about cannabis oil, hemp oil, and it took me 2 years to find it, and I found Joe, and then I fell in love with him as he was arguing in front of the judge.
And judge in Woodstock? or-
Kingston.
Kingston.
In Kingston, okay, yeah.
'Cause I thought
Now,
these
explain
arguments-
yourself, young man. What have you been up to and so forth? And then,
Well, what I've been up to is that I've been studying law for all these years. And
40-odd years, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
from
yeah.
fighting court cases. They keep arresting me for marijuana, so it left me no choice but to start learning the law.
Uh-huh,
But what I've been trying to do is educate the American people.
right.
You know, unfortunately, most of the American people believe government rules them and
Yeah.
dictates to them, and government makes rules for them to live by, when in reality, our Constitution was set up that we, the people, rule government. We're the ones who should be telling government what to do.
That we are sovereign.
Right, we are the sovereigns, right? And we should be telling government, no, we're not going to put up with this, or we want you to do this. There's some stuff we want them to do,
Right.
and they're not doing, and there's a lot of stuff that they're doing that we don't want them to do.
And you might be able to question their assumption that they would have us believe, in a historical sense, that they have historical legitimacy in terms of the institutions that are established and administrated in their name, of their authority that they're asserting is legitimate historically.
Well,
That's thinking it in a larger context, but that's what they're trying
So
to
is
assume.
ours to change it. If you look
okay,
at the Declaration.
and the Constitution gives interpretations of how this republic or this political entity is to evolve, and it's being ignored
Right,
because
it's
of
being
certain
ignored.
things that have been intervening in the process, and that could be testing the
When
the,
the fa-
claim, the pledge that they make to support the Constitution of the United States is being overlooked and bypassed by too many aspects of
Right.
the overall system that claims authority.
right. All judges swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution.
Every new citizen does. Everybody in the military does. That's
Right.
the highest order of the land that can be claimed.
And yet most of the judges trample all over the Constitution. When people are in courts, judges these days are more into getting convictions than they are into seeing that justice is done.
Okay.
You know? Our prisons are full right now of people that should not be there. First of all, most of the laws that they've made that put those people there should never have been made. They're illegal. They're unconstitutional. The government that made it didn't have the authority to make the laws. When the Founding Fathers set up the government, they set it up real precise. The president has certain authority. The Congress has certain authority. The Senate has certain authority. The Supreme Court has certain authority. Now, when they set up the Constitution, they gave authority to each of those groups. Authority given by the people can't be redelegated. Delegated authority can't be redelegated. But because the government went bankrupt, and then they reorganized the government, and it became a corporation.
That's around 1933, you're suggesting?
Right, under Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Okay.
Right.
Actually, it was
Yeah.
a corporation before, but that particular one.
It was reincorporated, right.
Mm-hmm.
It started actually under Lincoln. When they went bankrupt during the Civil War, that was the first time our government became incorporated. Then
Okay.
again, it went bankrupt under FDR, and they reincorporated it. So now what we have is a corporation running our country as opposed to the constitutional government that the Founding Fathers set up.
And they trick you using the name, so you think you're in a constitutional court, but you're actually in a corporate court. And there's ways they trick you, and we knew all of the ways.
You've learned
And that's what
that.
was happening in
Right.
court.
You've learned it over, let's say, just say roughly 40 years of
Yeah.
fighting, and you're wanting to let the people who have been incarcerated under marijuana laws that are in a certain sense absurd, and I think something's going to have to change on that front, because that war on drugs is out of favor, as it were. But you're doing that. You've learned the law and the constitutional rights that are being violated.
The Founding Fathers never thought that we would be putting people in jail for non-violent crimes. When the Founding Fathers set it up, if there was a victim, then that victim could bring someone into court. And the victim was the one who was actually established jurisdiction. But now we have the prosecutor coming in and going, the people of the state of New York versus so-and-so. Well, the people of the state of New York had no say-so. That's the prosecutor saying that, you know. And
prosecutor does not represent the people as we common language understand.
Right, right.
Okay.
It's just a scam that they're using to try to convict people.
Has it been like that from the beginning?
No, it wasn't like that. The whole court system that we have now is not what the Founding Fathers had intended.
Everything but. They even wanted judges not to come from the lawyer class.
Right.
Really?
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Right.
they wanted an impartial person to decide whether the remedy that the harmed party is seeking would know the needs of the community, not be using it to rip off. 'Cause
Yeah, and
otherwise
we
you
did
lot of
have a
power.
jury system that reflects that, I think.
Right,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that was
yeah.
that was one of the geniuses of the Founding Fathers, that they didn't leave the decision up to the court. They've set up a jury system where the jury was to decide both the law and the fact.
And the jury could stand above whatever the court officer is telling them the
Right.
law is.
Right.
You can't make law himself above what the jury wants to decide.
Right.
So that's a step that comes from Magna Carta, maybe, or
Right.
you know, the barons of
Yeah, it
rising.
sort of
against-
reflects that
yeah,
those who govern by consent of the people. That's actually
Right.
an age-old truth. Even the king himself
And
can be bound for
the American
common
people
good.
need to know that the only way that we're really going to bring change to this country is to get the courts back on track. We need honest judges, not ruling like tyrants. When a judge is in court and the judge is arguing with you, that's not his place. They do it in all the courts. The judge will go, well, you had the marijuana, didn't you? It's not the judge's place to say you had the marijuana. It's the prosecutor's place, you know. But the way we have it now in our court systems, the judge is arguing the case. Judges are not supposed to argue the case.
They're not supposed to make law from the bench.
Right, they're not supposed to.
Is that a way of putting it?
Yes, that's
Would a
it,
lawyer
exactly.
who's been to law school, or people who are legal scholars, or let's say the political class, because that's another group of people that we could begin to be thinking about linked into the court system. Judicial system is part of the larger political order and everything. Would they be aware of these things that you're talking about and just not?
They know it.
Or
but
are they ignorant of that and accepting an overall premise that the legitimate authority is vested in the established order that is now in place that we understand and much of the citizenry accepts as they've got their act in order, they've got legitimate authority to rule over us. That's the perception of people generally.
The lawyers know
When
it.
it's not really
of the
correct.
Ignorance.
Because of ignorance.
Through ignorance.
Would the established people, the establishment, know of these things of which you talk, but then have to just wink and nod and
Right,
and
they know
that
it,
kind of thing.
They know it, and
And is it catching up with them, or is it catching up with our
It
society?
depends if the search engines.
the only way it's going to catch up with them is if the American people wake up, and the American people start demanding change. Right now, we have a bar association, and the lawyers that belong to the bar association, their loyalty is first to the court. Like if you go into court and they give you a public defender, that public defender, his first loyalty is to the court. His next loyalty is to the people.
The prosecutor.
Well, the prosecutor is
as they
saying
would
he's
try
the
to do.
people.
Yeah, that's
right.
yeah.
Now his third loyalty is to the person he's defending.
Yeah, it makes you feel a little bit out there in the dark. doesn't
Right.
it?
So, and it's also when you go into court, if you have a lawyer, you're automatically a ward of the court, and they can decide anything they want to do with you.
Okay.
And under our form of law, if you're not capable of speaking for yourself, like if you had been in an institution, a mental institution.
Right. That happens.
If
we're
they bring,
going to talk about that
if they
later
bring you
today.
into court and you've been in a mental institution, well, obviously the judge assumes you can't speak for yourself. Therefore, they need a lawyer to speak for you.
Or they have a special provision where you have to have a guardian if you cannot handle your own affairs.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, since you're not capable of speaking for yourself by their rules, a lawyer has to speak for you. So now, if you're a ward of the court and the lawyer has to speak for you, now it's up to the lawyer and the prosecutor and the judge to decide what they're going to do with you, and you have no say-so. Even if you try to speak, the judge will say, oh, don't say nothing, you got a lawyer speaking for you.
That's right. That's right.
That's-
Now, has that way it's been from the beginning?
No, that's not how it's been from the beginning.
But that's how you're in a corporate court that pretends to be a constitutional court. Like Joe and I never even discussed walking out. It was never in any
Walking
of our...
out of something. You better clear up. What do you mean walking out?
We walked out of court.
You did. That's that's
Once-
bringing focus on a specific thing you've been involved in.
But,
Right.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
it's
Joe
worth
and I
developing.
didn't even have to look at each other. We were so in sync. We knew our paperwork. We were waiting for due process.
Okay.
And Joe can tell you
And
what
And you
due
were
process
representing
is.
yourselves. Was it pro se you were doing, or what
No,
was your
no,
status?
Sir Juris, as a
Sir
sovereign
Juris.
human being.
Sir
That's
Juris.
the only way I go into court. I let them know right away I'm a sovereign. I speak for myself. No one speaks for me.
And when they say that you cannot do that in this court, you must have a lawyer to represent you because you're too unable to understand all the nuances and the importance of the way the law is to be understood by a responsible citizen. You're not able to know that, so therefore you cannot be able to speak for yourself in any Sir Juris.
No, Your Honor, I
What do
tend
they
to. No,
say?
Your Honor, I intend to speak for myself, and you have no authority to not let me speak for myself.
Why do not have the authority to shut you up that way?
Because you don't give consent.
You don't
right,
give consent, so
right.
you can walk out. But then, we're not subject to the authority of the court system and so forth. We don't have to answer court orders.
Well,
and
we
that
got the
kind of thing?
Rosetta Stone.
It
You know, we
depends.
cracked the code. We know.
Who's
that
we? You and Joe.
Me,
You're
me
talking.
and Joe and many others.
And others, Mr.
People,
Glass and Mr.
Yeah, people
Raja,
we're learning
yeah,
from.
Right.
We
yeah.
always say we stand on the shoulders of giants. Constitution Man's mentor was Eustace Mullins.
Yeah.
And Eustace Mullins learned from Ezra Pound, who was a political prisoner in a mental hospital in St. Elizabeth. So, so there's a lineage of knowledge.
Well, okay,
Right.
now you're setting up that. It's a little hard for a lot of people because most people assume that the system is legitimate.
Most
And
people
not-
go
it's
through
not.
lawyers.
No, I mean, most people assume that if they go through like,
Right.
well,
I
we
know.
have a system and
So
the
did
president
I.
is legitimate. We
So
have
did I.
elections. If you want to become a leader or you want to stand for something more than yourself, vote. We'll get elected to Congress. Go through, make amendments, do that, get a law degree,
Right.
and all of this. And the system is legitimate, like they
Right.
used to assume that the legitimacy of the hereditary kings and queens of Europe were legitimate. That's where historical legitimate resided. That's where authority resided. Then it passed over here, and now this system, people just assume that.
They are legitimate if they don't break the law.
Yeah,
it's
but-
when they go unlawful. Right, Joe? That's,
Okay.
that's-
Right.
Well, okay, you're claiming that the system is becoming, has lost its moorings to the conditions
system.
under
To
which
the
it was set up.
Constitution.
The
No, not the-
Constitution.
Right.
no, individuals, not the system.
No, the system
The
itself.
system is systemic.
Don't put
It's not
words in my
just.
mouth.
It's not
The
just.
system.
I'm worried this is
It's not. It's not just. It's not just. Good. Okay. It's not just individual malfeasance or something. It's systemic.
Right, it's
And there's
systemic.
something like it was kings and queens had legitimate authority, and knights fought in the name of my lord this and that, and Azai's courts and all of this. That was held for 1,000 years. Then we got a new system, and now there's something going on in the zeitgeist now to where the system that has been established here in the United States and around the world and the institutions is not in keeping with what a future requires, which is a more liberated way that can herald back to the constitutional arguments in order to protect the rights of the people against unseized with, what do you call it, belligerent claimants that would be against the authority being asserted by people that have violated.
Right. Well, unless people stand up and fight it, it's just going to keep getting worse, and the next generation is going to be completely enslaved.
Do you think this has anything to do with roughly is termed the 1%, 99% thing that's trying to be born called the Occupy movement? That this is beginning to dawn, and the kind of things that you're doing, you're saying it should be fought in the courts. That's an important place, and in the law, in the understanding of the law and the protections that can be exerted for the individuals, if those who understand the law and what arguments, case law, and so forth can be advanced in protecting the rights that the Constitution gives, that has to be a part of the understanding of the citizenry in order to combat an unjust system that's trying to assert itself over the impetus that is being manifest by the 99% who are trying to say there has to be a big change. It can be done by anchoring it to the Constitution in ways, and that's a tactic that can be assumed and a strategy that can be assumed by the people that want to have liberating and progressive change for the people.
Right now, the founding fathers set up a constitutional form of government. When our government became incorporated, right, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund is now controlling our government through the Federal Reserve System.
Well, okay.
Right? Completely we're being completely controlled by the World Bank. They control our economy.
The World Bank. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
International Monetary
And the International Monetary Fund.
Okay.
We're in debt. If America's bankrupt and we're in debt, who are we in debt? Who are we bankrupt and in debt to? The World Bank.
Yeah, international. And it applies in Europe and other things too, in the country and the world. Yeah.
So now they're dictating policy.
Right, in the name of economics.
Right, and it's the Federal Reserve now that's even telling Obama what to do, and it's telling the senators and the congressmen.
They're not even hiding it. They
the
used to hide it in the
banksters
past.
are. In order to become a senator or a congressman, you need so much money to get elected.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get that money to get elected, you need to go to the banks.
$1 billion, I think they're going to run in this current re-election.
Right. So you need to go to the banks to get that money. So if those people have to get the money from the bank, then they're answerable to the bank. And if the bank says, "Well, we'll give you the money, but you've got to institute this rule or this thing," like they got rid of the Glass-Steagall Act.
Glass-Steagall, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When they got rid of Glass-Steagall, it allowed investment banking
and commercial
banking where people put their money in to come together.
Within a world where they have swaps and derivatives and AIG that was doing reassuring against law, so that could be run as
where
a
that
fraud
used
where
to
you
be
could
illegal.
Get money even if you lose.
That
Or you only can get
illegal.
money if you lose.
Right.
That's part of a context that has to be understood, right?
Under Glass-Steagall, that was illegal.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah, Glass-Steagall was finally voted out his last breath by a Democrat, Clinton, 1999.
Who was in the pocket, like every one of our politicians right now are in the pocket of the banks.
Somebody once said very candidly or something, they said, well, let's see, in terms of politics, there are some things that influence the politics. One of them is money. And I just can't remember anything else. It's all joined at the hip. The money, the economics, and the it used to be called political economy.
We don't even have money anymore. We just
Do you understand what I'm
notes.
saying? So the money interests are running things. That's the 1%.
Right.
And there's a few people gaining that way, and they're hangers-on who want to be part of the 1%. They got an ad going on television. Just saw it last night. It was some group who said, Take a chance on this killer app or something and become one of the 1%.
Yeah.
You know, one of the 1% that own all the assets, and the assets are all owned by a tiny plutocratic class in every political entity, in all of the international
I don't
order.
know if we like 1 in 99. We think of it one law for everyone. Like even the kings and queens, they betrayed their people. You had great kings and queens, and you had real rogues. So the idea of one law for everyone, Joe was the one that threw light on that, the difference between a democracy and a republic. Can you explain that, one law for everyone?
Well, a democracy is 51% of the people can vote to make the other 49% of the people criminals or slaves.
Yeah.
That's a democracy.
Yeah.
Some people say democracy is two wolves and a sheep sitting down to decide what's for dinner.
Or Woody Allen said, and quoting the scriptures, that the lion and the lamb will lie down together, and the lamb will get very little sleep. You know, that's
Right.
one way
Exactly.
of seeing it. Yeah.
Right.
But that's off the spiritual tradition that all of our spiritual leaders have been counseling. Take care of the least among you, take care of the poor, and the political class has completely ignored it, more or less, throughout all of history. They've just got new weapon systems to conquer somebody, get more power for their tribe, and build up, and it still holds, the realpolitik principle.
But I
holds.
found
Whoever's
it-
got the gun can rule, and is in a certain sense above the constrictions
and
of the law.
a big gun is the
But
camera.
our founding fathers...
The big
big gun is a
also
camera.
no. The big gun is also battleships and aircraft carriers
but a
and
camera.
drones and the means by which you can intimidate other people by power. You conquer them like the American
including
Indian.
psychologically. Which
Yeah,
is
well,
why
that's part of it,
We
yeah.
were being bullied in court.
Yeah.
So Joe and I, without even discussing it, you know, I didn't look at him, he didn't look at me. We just walked out. If
Now,
he's
you're
gonna-
talking
If he's
specific.
going to go ahead.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
let me
why don't
finish.
you
Okay.
bring that up, because that's a specific
Okay,
thing she's coming
but let me
to.
finish on you.
Okay.
The founding fathers
Yes, sir.
had a choice to set up this country as a democracy. They chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
They chose to set it up as a republic. And a republic has a constitution
Mm-hmm.
that is the law for everybody. The president is subject to that law as well as the guy sleeping on the street.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one law for all. And that way everybody knows where they stand. This is the law, no matter who you are, whether you're on top or whether you're on the bottom. But the politicians today have done completely away with our constitutional form of government. The founding fathers never intended that the government was going to make statutes. All the statutes we have really are unconstitutional laws.
The statutes
They're
as opposed to
for employees of a corporation.
As opposed to
common
the-
law or precedent
Right.
or
The
what?
Constitution and common law was the law of the land under our founding fathers.
Right, and then the statutes were into.
For
I don't
employees
understand
of a
the-
corporation.
Right.
For employees of a corporation, and we say we haven't gotten our paycheck from this corporation, we're not working for this corporation, and if we got involved with it through a birth certificate or through a driver's license, it was under fraud. That they say, here, you give us your precious rights, and we're going to give you a little bit of Social Security. That's what you'll see.
You're touching on big issues
go
here
on.
that I don't quite understand, or I don't
Well,
think
anyway,
the
I don't-
audience will understand. And we do want to get down to
Okay.
the terms and the specifics of this thing up and early, because that's likely
Yeah.
to because what is called a cause célèbre in terms of the
Well,
society.
everybody
in a
who
larger
came
order.
was a celebrity.
No,
Everybody
no,
who
I don't
came-
want. No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about
Well,
what
what-
you're doing is very unique, and it's important that people understand. And people should be getting committees in support of you too for what you're doing out there on the edge, cutting edge. That is really, really precedent-setting, really important, and really will positively feed the Occupy Wall Street, because it's not only just a matter of pot, which is an issue that's it's coming and everything, but it's also a thing that goes into the bank fraud. And
Right.
the securitized
Right.
mortgages
It's
and
all-
everything else.
it's all linked
so
together.
you too could become a
From
real
your mouth to
threat
God's
to the
ears.
system. You two got a case that could become a threat to the world system, be very embarrassing, and be very, therefore, creating a lot of blowback from the system when they realize that you are a real threat,
Well, we
rather
know-
than just kids playing in a sandbox
can't-
that can be ignored, like is the attitude of the system now toward Occupy. You could put some real guts into the Occupy movement that is needed.
Well,
Maybe you don't even realize that, but that's
no,
the way I,
I
see
think
it.
the Occupy movement is great, and I think the fact that the Occupy movement is out in the streets, getting publicity, getting people to look at what's going on, that's very good, but it's only half.
That's right.
Unless the Occupy movement organizes and takes it into the courts,
Right.
Where
That's where the action
That's where
is.
the victories
I've
are going
heard
to
Paula
be.
say something. That's where it's all been fought in the courts. You said
Right.
that.
Well, when you say we're against the system, I can't speak for Joe, but I don't feel like I'm against the
Okay.
system. I feel like I'm for the system.
Okay.
I'm very pleased with the Declaration of Independence. I thought it needed to be like renewing marriage vows.
Yeah.
We just took out the king and replaced it with the corporate United States of America,
I know that's something
residing in the
you've done,
District
yeah.
of Columbia. Everything fit to a T. We got insights into why things are the way they are. And then most recently, when we tried to file it with the Kingston County Clerk, she flatly turned it down. And I'm
You
very
believe a county
very
clerk
upset.
wouldn't file
I don't know
the Declaration of
I'd like you to
Independence?
spell
That
it out
was-
a little bit,
that
because
was
what you're
Joe.
doing is trying to get registered a writing of the Declaration of Independence. Is that it? Or
Right.
the
Well, we rewrote the Declaration of Independence. We took the original Declaration of Independence,
Tom Jefferson.
and every place where it said the king, we replaced the king with the corporate United States government.
Okay, now what does
Right.
that mean? Where does that come from? Where do you get that idea? What's the implication of
I just
doing
told you
that?
before, the United States government was incorporated.
Now, when does this date to? And what are
And
you
we're
talking?
not an employee of that corporation.
Well, no.
We've severed our
Spell it out,
ties.
because you're saying it. You seem to understand it very clearly, but I'm not sure that and if I don't, the people who are viewing, very many, have a hard time maybe understanding the implication, the deep implication of what it is you're asserting with that effort.
When they incorporated the United States government, we lost our constitutional form of government.
When who incorporated? When? Who was it? What act? How did
Well,
this occur?
the first
in what
time-
historical
Many
context?
steps.
The first time they incorporated it, because they went
Civil War, you said?
was Lincoln, after the Civil War.
Because they were so in debt?
Right, from the
Okay.
Civil War.
And why did they do that? What was the reasoning? What was the thinking?
The
Because
debt collectors were at the door.
The banks, the World Bank, again, it was the
I
Rothschilds.
don't think
and
we had the World Bank then.
No, not the World
There wasn't
Bank
the
then.
World Bank or the International
Well,
Monetary.
no,
Those are modern things.
Right, but it went under a different name. It was
Yeah.
still money from outside this country.
Right, it was still the money lenders.
Right, it was still the money
That they had
lenders.
borrowed from, and they used to do that back in ducal days.
Right.
You know, borrowing money
and
to fight a war.
Lincoln was trying to take it away from the banks, and he created what we call the greenback.
Yes.
And America was running on the greenback, and the banks didn't like that. I believe it was Lincoln was assassinated because of the banks.
You think? Yeah.
Yeah. That's from a lot of stuff that I've studied. I can't
Okay.
prove it, but
Yeah.
from a lot of stuff that I've read and studied,
Okay.
I really believe it was the banks that killed Lincoln, that were behind the whole plot by Booth.
Well,
And
okay.
interestingly
That's
enough,
interesting.
Booth's-
Certainly, it's a big change. Yeah.
And we even have architectural history here in Manhattan, because Booth's brother was a great actor.
Yes.
And the Players Club has kept his room exactly as it was at the time of his death. So the
yeah.
Players Club, you could say, was sort of, like in those days, there's no internet, there's no radio.
Of course, of
so
course.
Shakespearean actors would be providing the entertainment that the wealthy would listen to.
Yeah.
But the
John
actors
Wilkes Booth
themselves.
was a great actor, I think.
So the
but-
actors themselves would probably be privy to a lot of conversations going on. And even to this day, Eustace Mullins, I dropped the book off of his biography to Next Door, which is a National Arts Club. And I've heard that those two, the Players Club and the National Arts Club, had some long-standing disagreement. And even now, the show that you liked, where I just plunked myself across from the park, and I started talking about
Listen,
the New
I
York
like
Times article, just saying that
Yeah.
here's rich people fighting, and some of these people are probably the real trustees that stand behind some of these abuses, but their agents are taking care of it and probably telling them with this battery of lawyers that they're okay, but they're not. There's one law for everyone. If you have money that's coming from slavery, that's tainted money.
Well, that
You know,
had to-
not all money is created equal, so to speak.
Right,
and I
right.
think this is the meaning of socially responsible investing.
Yeah.
But as our case proceeds, I'm going to learn from Raja, the forensic examiner, how to do a forensic examination, and I'm going to be examining the family that I married into. Joe and Jay were indicted in 2008, right when the mortgage meltdown was happening. And I've been tipped off that all indictments are traded on a bond market. So once I get a hold of their actual indictment numbers and I learn how to do a forensic examination, I can prove this. I'll prove it. Now, we were never indicted because we never stood under the charges. Joe might want to explain what we said in court.
Well, we weren't indicted because the court that I originally was going to, I was a pain in the ass to the court in Kingston, and I don't think they wanted me back because I tied them up for 2.5 years in paperwork.
Well, that's very interesting. You could do that because you knew the law.
Yeah.
You'd run it over 40, autodidactically learned the law. Abraham Lincoln learned the law reading in front of a log fire in Illinois.
Right.
He didn't go to Yale Law School or sign on to some bar or something.
Right.
You understand? You really know the law because you're really understanding it, and you're understanding it in a nuanced way. You're encouraging the citizenry to come to do and follow your example, and Raja and hers and that. And also, these things could begin to realize some of these things that could be done when you get the case law, that could be done in a way that would become algorithmic. And so you've got to think where these things can be done and serve a whole lot of people who could take the arguments you're presenting in order to defend themselves against the interests of the voracious rich.
If part of the algorithm means people will stand up, that's a very important part of the puzzle. Raja is looking for fighters. He goes, I can give you a fabulous weapon, but the enemy is a moving target, and you have to become a sharpshooter.
And the enemy is
that's
also...
kind of,
if I may, don't you think the enemy, it isn't just a bank or it isn't a person, it's the whole system is not adequate to what is required.
The whole system has been corrupted.
It's been corrupted,
right,
or it's just outlived. Feudalism outlived its period of relevancy. The system that we have inherited from the Constitution has outlived its relevancy, even though it's been, tampered with and changed and winked at and done and everything, and anything to protect the interests of the wealthy and powerful. Well, that's what it is. Now, it's outlived that for something in the zeitgeist is creating. We're going to talk with Seth Farber today, a little later today, about there's something going on in terms of the whole evolution of everything in the universe and everything that requires something new, just as there was something new required after feudalism in terms of the evolution of human affairs. It's coming to a new order.
Well, I don't think that we've really...
I mean, I'm suggesting
I like feudalism, actually.
You do? Really? Okay,
I think
that's
a real feudalism means that if you're a farmer and you don't want people taking your crops after they come in, some lord comes along and says, I like to prance around on a horse with my armor, and here's my buddies that do it. We'll protect your crops if you give us a little percentage of the crops.
It sounds like Corleone and Company.
Yeah, so, I'm not thrilled with that either.
Well, yeah, but as long as
we don't agree on everything.
No.
Oh, really?
But I'm saying, as long as the crops are protected, you have an agreement.
But when we have a serious argument, she wins because she knocks out my teeth.
Oh, well. She's who's responsible. Huh? Yeah.
No, but you get my point. There's an agreement is off. Now we have public servants that are not giving us honest service. Like I was slammed on the hood of a police car. There's going to be a dash camera that can show that. Once they give up that exculpatory evidence, it will be seen.
I will bet you any amount of money they'd never give us that.
Well, they certainly should.
Or an accurate recording of your tape recorder.
Well, they will just say in a certain sense, we don't have to listen to your arguments. Fee on your arguments.
They do that.
That's the attitude they're taking because you're like children.
When the judge did that to us, when we told the judge, the prosecutor, in a court case, the prosecutor sets jurisdiction.
Okay.
So we had given the prosecutor 30 days to prove jurisdiction.
This is the thing in Hurley?
Yeah, in Hurley.
Yeah.
Our paperwork was strong, and he couldn't answer it. So
where did you get all that case study from that you could quote in there? There's a guy named Class?
Many places. A lot of it from Rod Class. But
he's somebody people should know. He's a pioneer.
Right.
Okay.
And I read
No, he's a researcher. He has really researched, I mean, in depth. I researched over the years.
Well, you're a researcher also, 40 years, in the interest of the people who've been put in prison for smoking a marijuana cigarette for crime.
But
stop and frisk follows on that, and all these other injustices that come down upon all the black and brown people and poor people generally.
Right. But I'm, as far as researching and knowing the law, you keep bragging and saying, Joe, you know it, but I'd put myself on about third grade level. Most people aren't even kindergarten level. They don't have a
Ci-
clue.
of the citizens.
Right, of the
What level
citizens.
are the lawyering class in that equation? Where do
They're
they
kinda
stand?
negative
Do they
6.
understand? Can they understand what you're saying and have it make sense in terms of an understanding of constitutional history and everything?
Most
or
of-
do they just not want to hear it? It's very hard for
Most
somebody
of
to
them don't-
understand something that their paycheck depends on them
Right,
not
right,
understanding it.
Right, and they've been taught in school to think a certain way.
Right.
And they've been taught in school, well, you got a bar license, therefore you know law.
Mm-hmm.
But what the way they've learned it is not the way. When I put my arguments in, a lot of my lawyers look at it and go, "Where did you get this? This will never fly." And,
Well, you have case law.
right.
You're quoting case law.
Right.
That's
It'll
where
never-
it comes from. It's common law.
Right.
And it
It'll
can be
never-
quoted. And it can be. What happens when you put that in front of them and then they've studied the law? It's
They
like
ignore
if
it.
somebody's a medical guy and you say there is a thing called a microbe. Look, that's a microbe. And they say, no, that's not a microbe. Do you understand? They have
Right.
a special understanding or all
Right.
specialization.
Right.
What did they do when this is presented? They've had some understanding. They're smart by and large. They have to be to get into
What
law
they
school.
do-
What do they take the intellectual class called lawyering or the legal system? What do they say when you present your overall theories?
Most of the time, I give them my paperwork. The prosecutor refuses to answer it because if the prosecutor says, like if I'm saying, I am a sovereign.
Right.
The Constitution says I'm a sovereign. The Constitution says we're all sovereigns. Right?
Well, I guess it does.
When
Does
I
it really?
say
Is that under
all the
question?
Supreme Court rulings, actually all the Supreme Court rulings that I was citing, all say the Supreme Court has ruled numerous times the people are sovereign.
Yeah, and that sounds
Government
like John,
is not
that sounds
sovereign.
like John Locke to me. And
Yeah, John
they-
Locke
it was so
and
And don't be
and
tricked
Jefferson.
by person.
No, okay.
But anyway, let me go
Sorry.
on. When I give it to the prosecutor knows he can't say you're not a sovereign because now he's violating my rights. So rather than answer my paperwork, he doesn't answer.
You're a subject.
Right. He doesn't answer
We
my
are.
paperwork.
That's what he wants you to be. You're a subject
We
of
are
our
subject.
authority.
Right.
They want to establish their authority over you,
Right.
rather than you being able to stand on your own 2 feet.
Right.
Is that the principle?
Yes.
Okay.
And- but
they
then-
reduce you to children.
Then the prosecutor will put in some of the most bogus papers. I'll have paperwork, and then when I look at his paperwork ain't arguing anything that I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's always up to the judge, and the judge is part of the club.
Yes.
The judge is part of the Bar Association. The prosecutor is part of the Bar Association.
What about the appellate levels that could judge
all
that
barred.
judge? Does
Even-
it go all the way?
They're
What
all
about
in
the
the bar.
governor? What
They're
about the
all-
president? What about the political process itself? How does that all nest, and how do these people deal with these questions that are being raised by your taking your position?
When the position
That's
we're
what I'm saying.
taking,
It gets higher and higher.
the
It will get
position-
higher and
The
higher.
position we're taking is we're saying you do not have the authority to tell me what to do with my life, to tell me what I smoke, what I eat, what I drink, what kind of medical attention.
Well, I've got this
I
statute
want.
right here that says it's illegal to have this awful weed.
And I say that the statute doesn't apply
No, but
to
it's
me.
a statute, and here I
But
got
the
the authority
Supreme
to throw
Court-
you in jail and
the
throw away the
Supreme
key.
Court has rules,
You know,
but-
Well, they do rule like tyrants, and
Yeah,
it
they're like
doesn't mean-
tyrants.
It doesn't mean that we're going to win, but our argument is right.
Okay, right does sometimes make right.
Depends what you mean by win.
Yeah.
If through
Win.
if
Well,
through
I mean,
bullying,
This
force,
judge could
coercion, duress,
overrule everything I'm saying, even though I know I'm on legal ground and
And
I
what if
know
you
I'm
go
right.
on appeal, or if you go above that, or everything? Does it ever get to where they have to question what you're saying on its own terms, rather than just saying, "We don't care what you say"? Which is
Well-
their attitude.
Well,
We're gonna do what we want.
unfortunately, our
we don't want
government
to
is
hear what
so
you got
corrupt.
to say about the Constitution and all this law and the common law and the case law and all the rest that can be done. The Supreme Court, we don't care about that. We don't want to hear it.
But I
We're just
think-
going to put you in jail and shut up.
I think the
That's their attitude.
I
That
think-
is their attitude,
Okay, now
and
that's
that's
not
possible.
right. That's not right.
Right, that's not
and is
right.
it not being challenged at some level by people, and not isn't the righteous ire of the population in general? And that applies to the whole system.
Unfortunately, the American
that applies
people,
to the whole system. It's not just
unfortunately,
the
you
legal
American
system.
people out there are sheep. You're letting the government control you instead of controlling your government.
In the name of gaining some security by buying out and signing on to this deal where they will become sort of wage slaves to the people who own all the assets and,
And it's a
the
threat.
power group that rules,
Right.
and it's like the kings.
And it's not very
They
secure.
used to bow down to the kings.
Right.
It's not very secure anymore. I mean, I was dealing with a wonderful lady at the bank giving me a lot of help. And she said over the 40 years in the bank, she's learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But she goes, I especially learned from you. But you know, my fear is that after 40 years, if they dissolve this bank, they're going to dissolve their obligation to her, and she'll have no pension. I mean, this is terrifying. I'm talking to my friend from Pakistan, and she knows many people, and she was born into privilege, who are in investment banking, and they're all terrified. They won't have a job soon. If we go through another 2008, which is looming, it's coming.
You think it is after Greece?
Well,
and that,
Greece and then Spain. If the banks are not honoring their commitments, they would rather survive and let all the countries crash. So if the euro goes down, so does New York real estate go down. The more pensions, I mean, we're going to be destitute.
So
that's why we have to get back to protecting the crops. Marijuana is just stealing from farmers. There's a
Our government has become a criminal organization.
Well, that is
all the way from the top to the bottom.
Okay. Okay.
And unless the American people start
that's why you
rising
took
up.
the Declaration of Independence and say not the king, it's the court. Or what do you call it?
No, the corporate government.
The corporate United States of America residing in the District of Columbia.
That's the way you change instead of the king. That's now the source of all the oppression, right?
Right.
It's the system.
Yeah.
And if you look at
private and public sector.
The debt is
if you look at the Declaration of Independence, I would recommend all you people out there get the Declaration of Independence.
Good document.
And read it. And as you're reading it, wherever it says king, put in the corporate United States government in Washington, D.C. And you're going to find that everything that the Founding Fathers were bitching about the king, our government is doing right now. Every single thing. It fits to a T to what's going on today.
Did you say somebody somewhere in Kingston refused to recognize that or something? That's interesting.
I'm glad you brought that up.
That could be printed sub rosa. Just get on every college wall that thing become a thing that would be. You understand what I'm saying?
By denying,
you just put it off the press.
You see, denying me access to the public record to file that was worse than being slammed on the hood of the car. It just was like a knife.
Explain what you were trying to do with that.
I took our legal document that we filed at Hurley over to the county recorder's office.
The legal document is the declaration.
The declaration is now a legal document.
In our court case.
With the new wording.
In our court case,
actually, we should do the roll-in and you'll see.
We got to roll in. We have to do that.
In our court case, we turned in the Declaration of Independence that we had revised, right? And the local court clerk there, who's a good court clerk, we like her a lot because she does her job right. Honest service.
Good.
She stamped it and recorded it for the court. So now it became a real legal document.
Right.
It has been entered in the court record, right? So we took it down to the county recorder, and we wanted to file it with the county recorder.
For the record.
For the record. And the county recorder, who didn't give us honest service and didn't do the job that she was supposed to be doing, refused to record it.
On what principle?
And we went up through about
We asked her, show us, cite the law.
Said, write down the law, why you can't do this and sign it. Because in New York, unless it's in writing, it's not binding.
Right, and what did she say?
She refused.
She refused to do it. At first, she said something that we were told at 60 Center Street. Cite me the law that says I have to do it. But see, the issue is if we're the sovereign people, and this is supposed to be the court of record for, the public record for the sovereign people, why are you not giving due process? Why can only a lawyer go in there?
Do you have any redress against her doing that, or do you have any redress maybe against the judge who's not going in your way?
Yes, we do.
And I wonder if maybe
Private Attorney General.
Okay. It's really interesting. Your whole case is getting like a big mixed salad. It's getting all kinds of peeled onions or some metaphor. But you do have a piece of tape, right? Maybe we could get that in. You mentioned it because
you want to do the roll-in?
Why don't you set it up, honey? What's
you want me to run in there and do it?
No, they'll do it. But what is you set it up?
It's Joe is talking. It's after the court. We walked out, so the people that are there.
Wait, let me.
Okay, you said it.
The judge. We had told the judge that the prosecutor. I was doing this before. The prosecutor was supposed to set jurisdiction. He didn't. We gave him 30 days to do it. He didn't. Then we gave him a 10-day notice to prove jurisdiction or default. He didn't in that 10 days. Then we asked the judge to default the prosecutor and dismiss the case, which is what he should have done by law, right? He didn't do that. Then he said, I have jurisdiction. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled numerous times that a court cannot declare its own jurisdiction, even though they'll do it all the time, the judges say,
How do they get away with it?
They say I'm elected. They say stuff. They
bamboozle
Right.
an ignorant population,
Right.
like a bunch of
and they
peasants.
bully
right.
people.
They
Right.
misuse
And bully,
psychology.
Right,
Uh-huh.
right. So now he said, I have jurisdiction. And we told him, no, you don't. You're acting unconstitutional. You're in I told the judge, you're violating the law right now.
I think he said it's traitorous.
Well, that came later.
Okay. Mhm.
I said, you're violating the law now, right? And then he said, well, we're going to move along with this trial, right? And they sent us paperwork saying we had to be back in court. So now when it would come time that we're supposed to go back in court, lawyers call us on the phone and say, well, I'm going to be your lawyer. And both me and Paula said, no, you're not, you're fired. Then when we went into court, we realized, wait a minute, how can we fire lawyers that we didn't hire?
Right, right.
So we said to the judge, I was playing with him a little bit, I said, Your Honor, we made a mistake when we fired the lawyers. And he got all like, oh, cool, they're going to get lawyers, because that's the way he wants it to go.
Yeah, right.
Right? And I said, we can't fire lawyers we didn't hire. You hired them, you fire them. And he said, I'm not going to fire the lawyers, right? And I said, well, they don't speak for us. And then he said, well, I've made my ruling, and that's how it's going to be.
From the bench.
Yeah, from the
that
bench.
can't be done.
Which is illegal.
It's
Right.
illegal.
Right.
And he also gets into part where he could be sued.
Right.
The
It
ability.
don't mean that the higher court is going to rule with us
Right,
either,
right,
because
no, but
the
it-
courts
but
all the way to the top are corrupt.
Right. Okay,
Right?
Yeah.
But I know we're right.
Yeah.
Okay, now then he says, we're going to move forward with the hearing. He was going to have a map hearing. And we were saying, you can't move forward. You don't have jurisdiction.
Right. You got the jurisdiction. He's just going to ignore the jurisdiction, and that's a foundational issue of jurisdiction
Right.
that has
Right.
to be addressed.
Yes.
Right.
It can't be just ignored and thrown away.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
But he chose to do that. So now he said, well, we're just going to move along with the case. And I said, well, not with us, you're not.
Yeah, there wasn't even a thought.
I said, not with us, you're not. We're not going to be a part of this. And me
Okay.
and Paula walked out of the court. And the
Okay,
judge said
now-
he didn't know what to do with
Let's
that.
get the rolling.
Had we sat down at that moment with one lawyer on my side who I made ultra crystal clear I did not want, I put in ceases and desists,
Yeah.
cease and desist from assigning lawyers for me. I never gave you power of attorney.
Yeah.
And then Joe had one on his side. So had we sat down again, that would have been consent to jurisdiction.
Yeah, you're right, and you
so
did not
what
recognize.
could we
Right.
do?
Okay, so
Right.
you
What
walked
else
out.
could we do?
Now, the trouble, one of the tyrannies of the universe is never enough time to get everything in, and we want to get now that's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so let's set that up in the booth, Josh. If you can set it up, George, it's about 4 or 5 minutes or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's not very
a
long.
roll-in footage of this that
And
would help
watch
to
for Joe
illuminate
when
this.
to-
And
to
so
cut it
set
off.
that
Yeah.
up and run it. Is that
Great.
the tape? Okay, run that tape then now, please. Cut
We-
off the
we
sound in
can't
the
hear it.
studio.
States of America.
We don't hear it in here, but put the pipe
Columbia,
sound in here.
and the corporate state of New York, and this court is a corporate court, and as sovereign human beings, corporations do not have authority over a sovereign, and that was the point we made in there. And when we come back, we'll come back the next time because he's given us an order, and we're going to tell him we're only here under duress, and this court lacks jurisdiction and has acted in a criminal manner.
Okay, you want to put it on me, and then I want to get Shelley because she's pretty.
Nathan, you want to do her?
Can you hold? I just want to say that when we wanted to clarify the record that we didn't want to that we made a mistake by firing these lawyers, we realized later, momentarily, that could have been accepting jurisdiction, that we had lawyers and that we were firing them. So you're allowed to make a mistake in court. You can make mistakes, but you have to correct them.
You have to correct it.
So we wanted to start off and say that we want to correct the record. That is, that if these lawyers were hired for us and we had nothing to do with it, then they should be fired by whoever hired them. And so we wanted to start straight out of the box by saying, fire these attorneys. We don't want them sitting anywhere near us. You could see the judge, that meant nothing to me. he had in his mind that he was moving forward. We had already said that we didn't stand under the charges. If he wants to stand under the charges, he can. The previous judge left the bench. Clearly, he did not want to stand under the charges. And every time we show up, there's a new prosecutor there too. So you can see that to get to these corporations, you have to go first through the individuals that are actually offending you. And even judges are not immune to suit. And that's under the 11th Amendment. They say they cannot be sued because of the 11th Amendment because they're a foreign state. But by the same token, if they can't be sued, they can't bring us into these corporate courts unless they extradite us properly through the State Department, and that has to do with the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. Now, a lot of judges throughout the country are undoubtedly on blogs themselves trying to figure out what to do as the country wakes up and starts to realize this is what's happening. So they test you on your feet, and like last time, I think he said to me, or the time before, do you know what subject matter jurisdiction means? Now, I bet a lot of people who, superficially listen to this on the internet turn in a lot of paperwork that might be perfect for somebody who developed that paperwork, but if you don't know your paperwork, you can't defend it on your feet. So at first, Joe and I were learning from Rod Class. We were a little upset we weren't getting enough personal attention from him, but I'm glad we didn't, because we had to pick through this ourselves. We had to change John Doe to our names, and as we did it many times, we learned more and more. So when the judge said that he was moving forward anyway, there was really nothing else for us to do, because had we sat there, it would have... Okay.
Hello. Sorry, it was so bright. What we're going to have to do is make sure we got about a minute left. We have to close. It's the end of the hour. And what we're going to have to let them know is how the audience, or people in the audience, can be in touch with you. You've got footage. The judge is just about to come on. This is like a teaser. For people who have to realize, because what you're talking is really important. How can people be in touch with you? You only got a minute or so. How can the general citizenry, politicians, anybody be in touch with you and what you're doing, particularly if they want to know more, so that they can support you in this important work, pace-setting work that you're doing up in Hurley, and give that information before we close out at the end of the...
Google our names. We're all over
Google
the
the name.
internet.
No, don't just do that. What should they do?
Go to YouTube. And if you can't get me through YouTube, I'm going to add that to my future lawsuit on the internet, because all of this success depends on access to the public record, access to you, the viewer.
Okay.
If you want this knowledge, you can find us.
So make it clear what you should do.
If you put in Paula, Gloria, and Joe Barton
in Google.
In Google.
It'll come up.
A lot of stuff will come up.
And if it doesn't, that's reason for suit, because
they're shutting us down. They're trying to keep us from being...
Are you sure? The Google
absolutely
is that?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we're sure that the...
Well, that's
I didn't
another...
even tell you, YouTube won't let me do long videos again today. It went off and then on again for a moment now.
Well, people one and all who are hearing, support these two. They're doing God's work, if there is a God, and they're doing the progressive work of helping humanity if there isn't. And so they're doing the work. They should be supported by one and all. They're here in New York. You want to give a telephone number or something like that, or just let it stay? Google their name. Paula Gloria, Paula Glori, Joe, good old Joe, Joe, Barton, Barton, a proud and historic name in this United States of America that they're trying to defend the rights of the citizens of, and they should be supported one and all. And thank you guys for doing, not only coming in doing this program and putting up with my nonsense, but also for the major work that you're doing, and you should have a number of people who are supporting you as you learn and help to lead this nation toward a freer system.
With us, everybody come to court. That's the most
we
important
need
thing.
people. We go back to court in Hurley, New York, on June 21st at 6 o'clock. We need as many people there, because if the court is full, then there's more chance of the judge allowing us to present our case. If there's no people there, they'll shut us up and they'll do what they want.
And they should be having people supporting people who are questioning the system in fundamental terms, instead of just accepting it like a nation of sheep, which is far too many people doing. Occupy Wall Street lives, and these are two people who are contributing mightily to that. Public access is a supporter of that. That is a thing that has to grow and grow and grow, become more and more inclusive, to where we may actually have a qualitative transformation that brings universal justice to this planet, which is sorely needed if we don't blow the whole damn thing up. We have to liberate rather than annihilate the humans, Homo sapiens species. They're contributing mightily to it. Keep up all the good work, you both. I'm so happy to have you on the set.
We love you, Harold.
Your pleasure. We're coming back again tomorrow, so please do tune in. These are two of the heroines and hero and heroine of the movement, and happy to have been able to present their perceptions. See you tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow. And don't forget, Paula Gloria follows conversations every day on the wonderful Manhattan Neighborhood Network public access system in New York.
Thank God for
May it
public
grow
access.
and prosper. Thank you for viewing. Coming back tomorrow.
Thank you. Did you think we got all that in?
No, we just got in what we got in, and I don't know. See,
Did
it's
we
my
get all
fault
that
for
in?
not pushing the button.
That's okay.
Now we have to do Seth about